Guys, let's get rolling here. And again, I am going to monitor the chat box as best I can. And what we're going to do today is a couple things. I've got a point, and you can see kind of the image of the point here, and we're going to run through it. There's actually 8 shots that we're going to look at. I'm not going to pause the video for each of the 8 shots and ask you the classic 2 questions for what's the right shot. Number 1, shot choice, where do you want the ball to land over there? And then number 2, court positioning, where do you want to move to next on the court? I am going to pause it a couple, 2 or 3 times on different shots, and I'd love for you to fill up the chat box with your choice in terms of shot choice and court positioning. And then the third thing that I'm going to do is when we're all done with a point, I want to come back and I want to look at each one of the shots and give you one stroke technique cue on each one of the shots that I think about. And we do have Jimmy Parker with us today. I might ask Jimmy too as well, kind of what's his one thought. And I know Jimmy's probably at that point in his career where he goes totally thoughtless on shots, but I'll bet there are some things that he might tell himself as he executes.
Brainless or thoughtless?
I said thoughtless, but brainless would be the same thing. Did I say brainless? I might have, but brainless could be a really positive thing. That's one of the things as a tennis coach I try to get away from, Jimmy, which is I think way too much about stroke technique when I'm playing, and I need to eliminate that as much as possible. So, guys. Let me just check the chat box one more time before we get rolling here. I know you guys are all chomping at the bit. And come on here. Whoops, that's not what I was looking for. Let's get back to gallery view. Okay, and now I got to go share the screen again. Sorry about that. Okay. This chat box open here. Okay, good. We got Mark in Scottsdale. All right, guys. So here we go. And the first thing that we are going to do today is Jimmy is going to talk for a minute, maybe 90 seconds, about the NSMTA, the National Senior Men's Tennis Association. And Jimmy, just give us the real short version of what this tennis association is, who it's for, how it got started, and the offer that you've got for guys today.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to put in a plug for NSMTA. Yeah, we're just really trying to fill in some of the gaps that we feel like the USTA does not. And I don't think we'd exist if I thought the USTA was really doing the job that they could do. But at any rate, what we're doing is opening up our website. That's what you see on the screen, nsmta.net. And, it's just everybody's kind of in this sheltered in place mode. So we thought this would be a good time to just make our website free to everybody. Normally, there's some aspects, some pages of the website that are not available to non-members, and there are some that are available to everybody. But at this point, everything's available to everybody. And that'll be, for an extended period here, just, until everything begins to normalize a little bit. But we've got a lot of content on the website. I'm really happy with the way it's developed. We've only existed for about 3 years. And by contrast, the National Senior Women's Tennis Association has existed for like 40 years. So it just took us males a little while to get off our butts. But I think we're doing a good job in presenting a variety of stuff on the website. So I'm eager for everybody to have that opportunity to kind of look and see what we've got. But it's a great place to look up tournaments. You can even find places to stay. We've got a lot of articles and stories about members and by members, and we've got some blog, book reviews, etc. So just go check it out. It'd be great. And in the process here, for this time only, you will have access to Brent's course on topspin serve. So that's a little added bonus, and we're going to be carrying his link so that anytime you want to, you can get back to web tennis. But anyway, appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Brent.
Jimmy, you're welcome, and glad you could join us today. And that's really a great offer. Hope you guys will take advantage of it. By the way, I'm trying to put links into the chat area, but they're not. They don't seem to be active. So you may have to copy and paste a link. There's two things today that I want you guys to do, especially at the end, is to go over to the nsmta.net website. And the other thing is I've got a tennis specific survey that I'm throwing out there. I'm really curious about what you guys need the most help with in terms of tennis specific fitness. A lot of you guys have already taken it, and I appreciate that. A little annoyed here that I can't seem to make these links active. So you may have to copy and paste them in to a browser. So guys, here we go. And let me kind of tee up the players here. First is we've got Mark Vines with the serve. His partner is Wesley Cash, Jeff Winkler with the return to serve, and Tim Garcia, a neighbor of yours, I think. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is from a point in the National Men's 60s Grass Courts 2019. And I'm going to play this, and I'm going to slow it down here. And this is the first shot where we actually took the still picture right here that Tim is lining up a forehand. And I'd love for you guys to think about two things. Where do you want the ball to go here, right? What's your shot choice? And would you move somewhere next? Or would you just stay here and kind of hunker down? So go ahead in the chat area. Let me know. Just go ahead and type in, what do you think's the right shot? And where would you move to next? And I'll go with Jimmy. Jimmy, if this is you, if you're all of a sudden a left-handed player, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I'm not doing a spoiler thing here, am I? If I tell, okay, so here, my idea in this situation is simply that you got one opponent who's farther back away from the net than the other one, and so the guy at the net is a little more, has capability of being more damaging to you. So you want to try to hit it low to the guy who's farther back, and Mark is right about the service line, it looks like. So that would be a good place to try to hit a low ball to his feet and make him hit up where he can't hurt you.
Okay. All right. And we got the Dean Corley. We got the great Dean Corley weighing in here, Jimmy.
All right.
He's saying anywhere away from Mark Vines. Not a bad choice. You know, I'm just going to scroll through these real quick. We've got middle. We've got lob over the net player, middle dipper, cross court, ad side, forehand down the middle and go to the net. Tim will roll it to the alley. That is open. Down the middle and then to the net, right over the middle of the net. Down the middle at their feet. Not sure where my next position would be. Down the middle, stay put, but look to move in. Dipper up the middle, move to the service line, over the net strap and below the net level on their side, close into the service line. Hit to the feet of the incoming server and follow. This is great, you guys. This is exactly what I was hoping for. Cross court to doubles alley past Mark and then come into the net. Either the middle guy in White's feet, that would be Mark, or in the alley on that side. Slow forehand dipper at man coming in, or slow roller to opponent's backhand. I guess hard down the middle is okay. The server's backhand. All right. So everyone is pretty much saying, Jimmy, right here, right? They're either going here in the middle or they're doing something over here. And let's see what Tim does here. He does the one thing no one thought of. Now, this is an interesting situation, right, Jimmy, where you've got both partners probably barking at each other, who's going to take it. And it ends up being Wesley, which is, I think, and I'm going to stop it right about here as Jeff comes in. And I know what Jimmy Parker would do here. It would be a drop volley that would bounce 17 times before it got to the service line.
In my dreams.
All right, maybe 15 times. if you weren't to play a drop volley, if you weren't to play Steve, sorry about that. Yes, you did say lob. If you were to play a drop volley, is there another shot choice based on where they are, based on where you and Tim are?
Well, I think first, let me mention this, that Jeff Winkler, who's the player getting ready to hit the ball, I thought lagged back after it was clear that Tim had hit the lob over the opponent's heads. So my feeling is that anytime that you make a ball bounce on a lob over your opponent's head, you come into the service line at least. See, Jeff is way back. So technically, he suddenly realizes, oh my gosh, I should move in here. And he has to really hustle to get that ball before it drops below the level of the net. So I would have liked to have seen him move in a little sooner and a little farther. And then if they lob back, if you're stationed around the service line yourself, you could move back for their lob in case they do. But in this case, he would have had a little bit easier time getting up there and keep catching that ball. It was still high. So it looks to me, like if you want another alternative, that this would be a good ball to angle out to his left, out toward Wes Cash and the blue shirts alley, because that looks like it would be pretty much open. Jeff is pretty far back. And at that point, you don't want to hit the ball so hard that they can easily get the ball on one bounce. This being grass, that gets to be a lot easier because you can angle it wide and slow. And he looks like that's kind of the direction that he went with it.
But I totally agree with you. If he's already around the service line, as Wesley's going to hit that lob, I'm sure he's going to play an overhead on that thing. So this is going to be where Wesley's getting pulled out of the court, and it's going to be down low, right? He's barely going to scramble to get to it. So knowing that you've got a lefty here, and that's one of the things that the great players do, is they're super aware of who their opponents are in any given situation, especially when you want to lob. Is there an overhead in the middle? Is there a potential overhead in the middle? And in this case, there is. So guys, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to pause the video here and just know that even if you can't see it, Wesley's going to reach down low, scramble. And if that is you, what shot are you going to play? Let me know in the chat area what shot you would play. I think we are. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay. Garcia and partners should have. Okay, that's right. All right. Tough shot. Players closing hard, and the ball is dropping quickly. Easy to mistime this one. Volley to the left. I'm assuming that Steve is saying volley up the line. Dan, thanks for trying to make that link work. I don't know. It's the first time it's ever happened to me. I can't make links work in the cover the alley, cross court lob. I think a cross court lob is not a bad idea, even though you do have a lefty's overhead. Lob the lefty. Deep cross court lob. Okay. Lob cross court very high and down the middle. Looks like he should lob to lob middle. Lob cross court over the lefty. Lob over Tim's right shoulder. Okay. So, yeah. So that's not a bad shot choice, Jimmy. Would be a deep lob, because you do have a lot more court to work with here than if you go up the line.
Yeah, you've got an extra 4.5 feet.
You got an extra 4.5 feet there. So the only risk is that you are lobbing kind of right into his overhead. If it's anywhere short, it's going to be a problem. So, and I'm going to give Wesley complete credit on this. He's realizing that the player in front of him, where his backhand is, and he lobs to Jeff's backhand. And there's really no time for Jeff to get around it and play an overhead. So I think that's a pretty good shot. What do you think, Jim?
I like it. I mean, that's ideal. He's, he's really almost given Tim and Jeff the, kind of the shot that they are least able to put away.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So now we're going to stop. Now that's just a stab volley. And Jeff now is going to. Okay. So you can see the ball. It's right here off his thigh here. Guys, let me know, what shot would you play right here? Knowing the ball's down low, it's not above the top of the net. You don't have great geometry with a lot of choices because the ball is going to be down low. So let me know what shot you would play. And Jimmy, what do you think? What would you do in this situation?
Let me backtrack just a little bit and look at Wesley in the blue shirt there. After he made that save, it was interesting that he came all the way forward. Now, you know, some guys might just hang around where they were, but as a result, he was able to, you know, get a volley. He's now in pretty good position at the net. And so he did a pretty good job of kind of extricating himself from what looked like a pretty tough situation. So now, you know, despite, I can't remember what viewer comment said, keep the ball away from Mark Vines, but Mark, it's
That was Dean.
extraordinary.
That was Dean Corley.
Oh yeah, Dean.
Yeah.
But yeah, leave it to Dean. He is one of the smartest doubles players we're ever going to see.
That's right.
But anyway, in the case of Mark, I still think that Wesley at the net is a little bit more dangerous than Mark hanging back. So in this case, I'll defy Corley and say, I think I'd go deep cross court to the corner of the court if I could. And make Mark play a ball off the bounce where he's stretching to his left or to his left for his forehand.
Okay. And what I like about that too is that it gives Jeff a little time to kind of recover and get into and get into a better core position. You know, if he tries to go up the line, there's a moment there that if it's not perfect, I mean, this thing's going to be wide open for Wesley. And if you try to lob from such a short distance, it's got to be perfect. And, you know, Wesley's not the shortest guy out there. So I like your shot choice based on giving yourself a little time to recover. And sure enough.
Oh, he executed that almost perfectly.
Yeah. And look, so I'm gonna sort of do what I was talking about. I want to give you guys a little idea of stroke technique here. I'm gonna give you one cue. So with this, what I'm thinking about is I'm definitely thinking about a slice backhand. I'm thinking about going cross court, but I'm thinking about mostly using my feet to play the shot so that I don't hit it and stand here, that I'm actually trying to hit the ball sort of with my, and I think we'll see Jeff do this, move over there as he hits it. And even if it's not this good, I think Tim and Jeff are in great shape here for the next shot. So, guys, I think I'm curious if there's any final thoughts on this point before I go into, I want to talk about stroke technique. And maybe if there's one thing that kind of jumped out to you guys at this during this point. In fact, let me do this. I'm going to play this in real time. I don't know how clear this comes across in real time, but let's just take a look.
That was a good shot there.
So if you've got any thoughts, guys, on this point, maybe there was one thing that you saw, or maybe one thing that Jimmy pointed out to you. It's kind of.
Brent, I've got one more thing there.
Sure.
Toward the end there, once Jeff has hit his backhand cross court, I think it's interesting how Tim and Jeff move in almost perfect synchronization from, keep going. Okay, as he goes cross court, now watch how they stay together in their movement. So
right.
that it's almost like, and I've heard, and I'm not sure that this is the exact number, but that players who are moving together in an appropriate way for proper court coverage are about 14 feet apart. and they move as a unit. So you can see they're almost like they're yoked together as they both move to their right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and definitely for sure on this play here, something else I want to point out too, Jimmy, is that a lot of coaching out there says that Tim should not be looking at his partner. Tim should be looking at the player cross court for an indication as to where his partner's shot is going to go. And in this case, I think Tim definitely does the right thing by watching what Jeff does, assuming that Jeff's not going to, put it right back to Wesley where it's going to be in harm's way. But I think Tim's looking at him to see what's the quality. And now he sees it, and he can instantly know exactly what the angle is. He knows exactly what the speed of the ball is without getting that kind of information from looking at the opponent. And I definitely know there are some times when we have a mad poacher up there where, you've got to be looking at that player to see if they're going to poach or not. But what do you think? In this situation, Tim looking to see what shot Jeff is going to play without looking at an opponent, is that the right thing there? Jimmy, did I lose you?
Oh, no, you were asking me. Yeah, I definitely think so, because he's not having to turn around. So actually in his periphery, he's still probably got, where the other guys on the other side of the net are. So I think, yeah, there's no issue there at all.
Good. Let me go through some of these. Okay, looks like everyone got that shot right. Yeah, cross-court drop shot I think is a good play. This was kind of a hybrid, Martin. This was kind of a cross-court hybrid drop shot. Chip cross-court, yep. Cross-court short, always good. Lisa Dodson, the great Lisa Dodson with the Serve Master training tool. I think I need to make my shot selection based on guys can place the ball wherever they want, even in really poor conditions, not what they look like they are forced to do. That's good stuff. Really good stuff, Lisa. Thank you for joining us, by the way. Yeah, good. All right, guys, I'm going to take this back, and I would love for you to continue to give me some feedback here in the chat area. I want to kind of look at Jimmy. I want to kind of give one cue that I think about on each one of these shots. And so, number one, if I'm playing the ad side and I get swung out wide, the first thing I'm trying to do is line up my front. I'm really trying to get my front shoulder turned, so I'm not facing the ball. I'm really trying to get my front shoulder turned. So one cue for me would be to have already turned and pointing this front shoulder at the ball, I think a little bit earlier than Jeff did. Jeff ends up making a nice shot. He's pulled out wide. But for me, getting that shoulder turned, really getting out of that forward-facing position where you don't know, right? You don't know what you're getting at a mark, right? You don't know if you're getting a ball to your forehand, a ball to your body, a ball to your backhand. First thing for me is as soon as I identify it's going to my left, I'm getting my shoulder turned. How about you?
Yeah, I think turning the shoulder is the first thing you do really on almost every shot in the game. And once you're sideways like that, your swing is aligned with the axis of the court. So when you're swinging your arm, you're moving, your racket and the whole complex toward the other side of the net, which is exactly what you want. One thing I'd quibble with here is I don't think he gets his right foot down before he hits. And I would like to try to do that. Sometimes it's, Mark's being the lefty and swinging that lefty serve out wide. It's sometimes tough. So his foot gets down a little bit after he's hit. And I think you're a little bit less stable that way. But I mean, sometimes you just don't have a choice.
All right. So we've got a lob, semi-lob return. And, for me on this, where I'm going to play a high backhand volley, Jimmy, I'm thinking the mistake I used to make is trying to pull the ball down into the court. And too often, if the timing wasn't right, it was too early, I'd pull the ball down the net. If it was a hair late, I'd end up hitting the ball out. So really what I'm thinking about here is more of a linear swing rather than high to low. I'm thinking more, and I'm just thinking, what's the height over the top of the net I want this high backhand volley. And, you know, mindset wise this is not a put away opportunity. So I'm just trying to put the ball somewhere that I think is right and then maintain good court position. And again, early shoulder turn, and then I'm thinking certain height over the net with more of a linear swing. How about you?
I agree completely. And I think looking at this point now that where Mark and Wes went wrong was this first shot, because Mark has a high backhand volley. He's not going to hurt anybody with it. Tim is closer to the net and therefore able to get the ball back to them sooner. So it seems to me by where Jeff is, he would have been the better player to send the ball back to, because he's all the way at the baseline. And, you know, as it is, Tim is enough inside the baseline that when he lobs, it catches them because it gets over their heads quicker than if Jeff had made the same shot.
Love it. On Tim's lob, what I like is the sense that he's setting up the racket. He's prepping the racket where you don't really know what he's going to do, right? All of the responses, except for one or two, I think, said it's going to be a drive up the middle or it's going to be a drive cross court based on this racket prep. And I think that's a part of the game. I think the top players, Jimmy, can disguise what they're going to do. Because if you don't have some level of disguise, if you start to telegraph where you're going to hit this shot, I think that you lose the I think that you lose the advantage. Now, look, what's to say that Tim couldn't drive this ball up the middle from this racket prep? What's to say that he couldn't come around the outside corner and sort of dip it over here in the alley? He could, right? But he can also, and maybe this is another thing that sort of catches these guys by surprise, is he can also lob off of that racket prep. So for me, the one cue for me is going to be, how can I really set up early and simply where there's some disguise factor, and obviously commit early to the shot I want to play. I don't want to be going through my laundry list of choices and then the last second kind of decide. But what do you think about this in terms of early racket prep where you can disguise what shot you're going to play?
Well, you've really hit upon something that I think is kind of the secret sauce in a way that distinguishes the very top level players from the next level down. And I had enough experience playing guys that were, just so good. I mean, I have to say that of the players that I played, that Laver was absolutely the best at making you think he was going to do one thing and then doing something else. So it's one thing to have, let's say, three alternatives. Let's say that Tim certainly has a capability to hook that ball around the outside and go for Mark's alley. He certainly has the capability to hit the ball right down the middle, and he shows us that he also has that capability to hit the lob. But beyond that, it's like certain players have tells that you can read. So when they're going to lob, they set up a little differently than when they're going to hit the ball. Or they may even have patterns where we know that when we see him in a certain position on the court with a certain shot, he's most likely to do whatever, cross court, down the line, lob. Tim, as the guys that are tuned in today from Santa Fe, we all know Tim can make the ball go about anywhere he wants. And so that's what makes him so tough, is that he not only executes the shot, but he doesn't let you know what's coming.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think the other thing too is that you have to think sometimes it's like maybe Tim was in this situation. Maybe the fellas were in this situation within the last 10 or 15 minutes. And maybe in that first time, he drove it up the middle out of the same look. What's to say that he's not remembering that and thinking, well, this is what they're thinking. I drove it up the middle last time. Let me set up so it looks like I'm going to do that again, and then play the lob. So I think we talked about this before, Jimmy. The lob is so good that it actually brings both opponents together, and you got to believe that right now they're both barking at each other. Who's going to take it? And so, right. And, uh,
Now,
and
I think
actually,
it's an interesting point you're making about what you make your opponent believe you're going to do. So, what a lot of players who are, I think, just again at that very elite level, it's like they also play you along so that they make you think that you might know ahead of time what they're going to do, but then they don't do that.
yeah,
So, especially on big points. So, let's say a guy's been going down his line, or let's say Tim's been hitting that lob somewhat regularly. He's gotten the ball over their head 2 or 3 times in this match. And now it's break point. And so, here's the same situation coming up again. What are those guys naturally going to think? Oh, boy, here comes the lob. Well, that would be the perfect time for Tim to, lace it over around the alley there, or basically do something different. And that's, again, where the very top players are almost like one step ahead mentally. They've got that edge because they have now got their opponents not only in the position they're familiar with, but they think he's going to do something different than what he's really going to do.
love it. Love it. Um, I think, Wesley ends up taking the wrong angle to the ball, right? So the ball ends up sort of right in front of him right now. And I don't know why. I mean, maybe that's because there was some communication going on right about in here where they're both looking at it and no one knows who's going to take it. And it could be that, and look, we don't know for sure. It could be that Mark says mine, and then he goes yours. And now all of a sudden Wesley's we'll never know. But I think the whole technique here is to take your time with your lob, is to not rush it. I think too often what happens is players start reaching away from their body a hair too early, and the stroke technique gets compromised, as opposed to just track it down with your feet and make sure that you can play it where you feel on balance. And I mean, Jimmy, you and I know that all you're trying to do here is, number one, is buy some time. You don't have any offensive advantage at all. There's no way that Wesley's going to hook this thing over the top of his head for a little highlight, drive in here. So again, it is just trying to get it up and high. Maybe you have to gauge the wind, but this one ends up short. So, and I think you're right about Jeff. He ends up realizing, dang it, I should have been up there. It starts to realize I've got an opportunity, and I think technique-wise, he reaches out for the ball too soon. I think his opportunity is lost, and he's sort of stretched out, straightened his arm, and I like to have it a little bit more bent when I make contact. Just, I think, a little bit better feel. And so I'm actually going with your shot here, which is what you were talking about, where the ball ended up not as a drop shot. But I guess my technique cue on that would be, don't reach too early. Don't reach out too early. Get the arm straight to where you don't have much feel on it.
One thing you mentioned there that I think is really important, you talked about as they're running back, somebody's saying mine or yours. And, in doubles, it's so critical that the partners know who's going to take what. And so I like to, as soon as a lob goes up, I like for one of the two players, the team that's getting lobbed, to say mine or yours, because it just clarifies everything.
Yeah.
And if you run into a situation where one player is called mine and the other guy kind of says, no, it's mine, you run the risk not only of banging your rackets together, but actually hurting each other, because both guys are now going for the ball. So, yeah, you kind of wonder what was going on back there. Were they talking to each other? They probably were. There might have even been a discussion going on. But I do think it's important that as soon as possible, that it's clear who's going to take what.
Right. Well, look, so in this situation here, at some point, Mark has to clear away to give Wesley the sense that I've got room to take a step to my right, so the ball's not directly in front of me. And I think that's what happens here. He just doesn't feel he's got the room without banging into Mark to play this lob. So let's take it to this next shot here. And this one is just, I think there's not a lot of technique to work on this one. But what about this right here? So this goes back to the high backhand volley. Is there anything you think about in terms of trying to get a little extra juice on this high backhand? Or are you just thinking, Jimmy, in terms of right now, there's a spot that I want to hit, right? There's a spot here, there's a spot here, wherever. Or are you actually thinking about something to do to try to get a little bit more juice on this shot?
Yeah, that's a tough shot to get a lot on. What he's done there, if you move it back just slightly, you notice how low his racket gets as he brings it back. So there he's dropped his racket down a little bit, so he's got a little bit more momentum by the time he gets out to the ball. And he does a pretty good job, I think, of catching the ball as far out in front as he can. Once that ball gets behind you, it's really just biomechanically difficult to get any power on it. As you push it forward now, let's see if he snaps his wrist at all. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, that's just if I had been him, I don't think I would have gone to Wesley. I think I would have. At this point, you see how far the middle mark is. There's kind of an opening over there,
yeah,
and that lends itself to a right-hander kind of coming around with a high slice that would have kind of broken out away from Mark. So by going to Wesley, if Wesley really hits a good ball, there's an opening right there.
That's right.
That's right. So I think there was a little bit of a misplay on Jeff's part as far as just shot selection goes.
Well, look, first of all, technique's really rough here. I mean, especially as we get older, this is a tough shot to get any offensive power on. So I'm with you on this, Jimmy. I'm thinking, what do I have to do to get myself aligned to this contact point so that I can pretty easily get it over to the cross court area, and at the same time, not try to go for so much that it pulls me away from the middle of the court. I'm looking to just say, let's just go back cross court in a way that I can recover. And you're right. I think they get fortunate here that it was just a hair out of Wesley's reach. And now we've talked about this technique wise. Again, I'm thinking here, play this with my feet, because I can't guarantee that this is going to stay open, because right about now, Mark might be anticipating where I'm going to go, and he could start right now. And that if I really went after this thing and hit it well, and Mark's anticipated that, he's got the ball now, and I'm still stuck out here. So I'm thinking, let's hedge the bet by going with the feet to try to challenge more with core position. And look, if you hit a winner, so be it. You hit a winner. That's great. That's great. So, guys, so this is Peter Spalding. Yeah, it would be neat if you get the players in the video on the line to ask them what they were thinking. As for me, I usually cannot recall what the shot was. Or yeah, no, I think that would be fun to do. So, guys, what else? What else? Have you got any questions for Jimmy Parker? Any questions about this point? Anything that's on your mind before we close it on down? It's about lunchtime here in the desert. Jimmy, thank you so much.
I've got one comment there. I
Sure.
just noted, in that last sequence with Jeff. You remember at the beginning of the point that when Mark Vines served wide, that I said that Jeff never really got his right foot down before he hit.
Yeah.
And then he kind of does that again on that high one where he's got the high backhand. And I'd like to see kind of the sequence look like step hit instead of hit step. So watch how he goes hit, and see he hasn't got that right foot on the ground. So there's no ability to transfer any weight. There's no ability to stabilize the front of his body. He's kind of stretching. Now, maybe again, he couldn't get it down, but I prefer, and I think it's just a lot more stable if when you hit those backhands, especially when you're a little bit stretched out, that you've actually quieted your body with the foot on the ground as opposed to leaving it kind of dangling. So that may be a quibble, because I noticed that then if you move it forward again and he gets that shorter ball, he gets his right foot on the ground really well. He transfers his weight really perfectly right here. So he just flows right through that. That's the way I'd like to see all of them look.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think on this on this reflex lob that
yeah, he just may not be able to get,
I just wonder if he's got enough time, and yeah, may just have been not enough time on that. Let me go through some of these. Okay. We got some great questions here for you. Jeff is asking you, Jimmy, how do you go about learning geometry of the court? Wide open question.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I think some of it is just repetition, where you've hit balls from so many different places on the court. I mean, I've read things like that. Basically, a tennis player who's played a lot has kind of a template of a tennis court in their brain, and regardless of where they're hitting the ball from, they kind of know how far. And it's not in terms of feet; it's in terms of feel. So, in other words, how far away is that other baseline? How wide is the court from here? What's the difference between when I play on a singles court and a doubles court? We know the alley's 4.5 feet wide, but what does that feel like when you're trying to hit a shot given a particular margin for error? So I think some of it is just repetition, but I think some of it's awareness, where you're really trying to, like I used to try to get students to really calibrate what they're doing. So we would hit basically the same shot from 3 or 4 different places that were pretty close to each other, but enough different that they had required a slightly different touch. And so I think that it pays to know the things like, I know that in singles that the court on the diagonal is 4.5 feet. I don't know what it is in doubles, but it's 4.5 feet longer on the diagonal than it is down the line. Well, that's good to know, because that means, for instance, if you were hitting a lob, if you go cross court with it, you've got 4.5 feet more to hit into. So when you're talking about court geometry, I think that it comes from having a basic idea about, what dimensions you're dealing with. But more than that, it happens with the number of balls that you've hit from different places, given different amounts of spin, pace, wind, ball fuzz, court surface, all those things.
Yeah. Well, so much of it is time and space, right? As goofy as that sounds, especially in doubles, obviously in singles as well. Shot choice for me is way more about, if I play this shot there, what am I risking in terms of court geometry if that opponent gets to it? And that is sort of like, well, if I played over there really quickly, I have less time to cover up. Maybe on some balls, I actually want to play it over there slow and low so that I can buy some time to get into the next best court position. And I think there are a lot of players out there, Jimmy, who understand court geometry so well. They're not big, thunderous shot makers, but as you're receiving one of their balls out of your peripheral, you're looking over there and you're seeing either him or you're seeing your opponent in singles or your opponents in doubles. God dang it, they're always in court positions where my shot choice is really limited.
Absolutely.
So I think you guys could start thinking about court positioning rather than shot making, because there's so much discussion on topspin and this and that, sometimes power and spin get you into trouble because your opponent can actually handle it, and now you put yourself in a lousy court position. Jimmy, this is from Tim. Is there one specific thing either of you change when you play on grass?
Absolutely. The grass is kind of a surface apart from the other ones, and I love it because it actually creates more variety. In some senses, playing on a grass court is a really fast surface, and then with certain other shots, let's say a drop shot, it's one of the slowest surfaces you'll ever play on. So it has a wider range of possibility. and spins react differently. For instance, when I was learning how to play tennis, most of the majors were on grass, 3 out of the 4. So Wimbledon, Australian, and Forest Hills with the U.S. were all on grass, and all those surfaces were actually different from each other, even though they were all grass. But the reward for hitting things like underspin approach shots was different then than it is now, where only one of the majors is on grass. So one of the things you got to figure is that the ball's going to skid. On most grass surfaces, you're more likely to get a bad bounce. So I used to figure that I'd stand a little bit more in front of the ball in case it veered left or right. For sure, you're going to have to get down lower. There are grass courts where sometimes after a rain, the ball may not bounce much higher than your sock. And so,
Yeah.
there are just different shots that are available to you. I think on grass, I come to the net more. I drop shot more. I drop volley more. Basically, it's a slightly different game than it would be on a clay court or a hard court.
Yeah. I think for me, the one big difference is the footwork is not as stable on grass or not as stable on clay as it is on a hard court. And for me, I just have to trust that I don't need to go into a massively deep split step, because I've done that before, and it's not a good thing. It's like a cow on ice when your legs kind of spread apart like that. I think Sharapova came up with that one. But for me, it's really about balance, and it's really about maintaining better balance on a grass court than you would on a hard court, because a hard court, you can get slightly off balance and recover so much easier footwork wise. So it's balance, and it is, I think more for me, it's trusting, it's trusting that I don't have to force as much with shot choice, right? That as long as I play a smart shot, either I'm going to be in the next best court position and have an easier maybe put away opportunity, or going to force them into a tough shot. So Don's asking Jimmy on this shot right here, on the final shot, and I think in the final shot here by Jeff that Mark might have a play on. I think he's asking, is Tim far enough over to cover a good shot down the alley? And my response is always, we can never, as a team, we can never cover 100% of the court, no matter what. There's definitely a chance on this shot here that Mark could go up the line. But there's also the thing that if Tim is looking for that and going too far over here, well, now this opens up something else. So my thought, Jimmy, in doubles is that we can never ever cover 100% of the court all the time, but I think we can cover a pretty good portion, 80, 85%. And if we can maximize that 100% of the time, I think that's the best that you could ask in any given situation.
Yeah, that's a great way to conceive of it, because, there's some impossible shots. In fact, I've seen Mark make some that, you just thought, how did he hit that? But in this case, it looks to me like he's going to be a little bit late. So maybe Tim could be over to his right another step, because if Mark is late, the ball's going to come toward Tim's side of the court. And it does look like he's left a little bit of alley open there, but that is the high part of the net. And Tim's pretty well set up, so he can probably move to where it is. So I would say that, he probably could be a half a step over farther, but it also may have to do again where he's beginning to read the body language of Mark and beginning to get an idea about where Mark actually might be trying to make the ball go. But what we do know that he's not going to be hitting it hard because he's so stretched out.
Yeah. Let's go. So here's one. Steve is asking if Jeff is too far back on his setup on the return in here. And look, could be. It could be because Mark does have great angles, right? He can swing you wide in the ad court as a lefty. I mean, we've seen Mark take it down here, but we don't know what Mark's been doing up to this point of the match. And just because you may have the book on Mark Vines and how he serves on a grass court to the ad side, he's so skilled that he could change the book up on you in a heartbeat. So it's hard to know why Jeff is returning serve here. I actually think he does as well as he can off a tough serve, and I'll let Robin brought up a good point here that Mark is now dealing with the sun. So if you look at the shadows of everybody, there's a chance that Mark Vines is having to deal with the sun up here, and it may be that he's just trying to fight it off, right? And it, you know, you're right, Jimmy. A better shot might have been in this area, but it could be that he's just trying to fight it off, and it kind of
I
leaks
think
over
you're
here a
right.
little
I
bit too
think you're
close to
right.
Tim.
'Cause that sun was brutal. It was low in the sky,
Yeah.
and that ball might have gone right into it.
Let's see what else we got. Okay, Lisa, thanks for hanging out. Got to go. Good. Um, Tim volleys quite well. He had the alley covered. Tupper knows that. Okay, Jimmy. Good, man. Guys, I'm going to shut this down. And listen, I really appreciate you not only joining me and Jimmy today, but I really appreciate you with all of the great comments, all the great questions. And if you love this kind of version of What's the Right Shot, let me know and we'll just do it again. And obviously want to thank Jimmy Parker for hanging out with us today. Guys, if you're not a member of the National Senior Men's Tennis Association, I encourage you to do it. I don't know, what am I, Jimmy? A life member, a founding member, something like that?
Yeah, you are one of our highly valued members as well.
Okay. Checks in the mail, man. That's good. So look, a lot of the website over there is open to anybody, but a lot of it is reserved only for members. There's some great stuff and there's some great content. So what Jimmy and the NSMTA organization are doing, and is this going to be for a while or just a short amount of time, Jimmy, or what's kind of the time?
I don't think we've set a time limit on it yet. So
Okay.
I'd say, minimum of a month.
Yeah, good. So guys, get on over there and you're going to have full access to the entire website. And that is very, very generous of you guys, Jimmy. So guys, with that, I am out. Jimmy, thanks so much, man, for your time today. Really, really appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
Always great to hang out with you. All right, guys, as always, stay safe, shelter in place, social distance, but help someone else have a spectacular day. Guys, we'll do this again soon. Thank you.